person with a system will always beat someone without one. Here's what my system for exploratory data analysis looks like after a decade and thousands of data sets analyzed. I feel like I'm having deja vu. Welcome, friends and foes, to another Data Devotional. This time, part 2 of the EDA using the Silverman survey data. I'm Luciano Pesci, the CEO of Emperitas and Nexum. I'm going to do one of those TV-like recaps where I quickly blast through everything we covered last time, and then we're going to jump into the EDA where we left off in R and move to PowerBI. While this is our second exposure to the Silverman survey EDA, it is in fact the same wave. We're still in the first wave of EDA, but EDA will happen in multiple waves. This is a data set that I will be looking at for many months, probably well until the spring of next year, 2024, because this is not a one and done process. Right now, we're at the handed a new data set stage. Soon we'll need to do additional EDA for the predictive modeling, or we'll need to return to this and change variables, change some analysis, look at the data in different ways as we prep for the predictive modeling. And as new data comes in through additional Silverman surveys or as data pipelines are set up for real-time automation, we will need to return to the EDA, to what we've done previously in this wave, what we will do in future waves, and compare the results that we're getting over time. A comment to the last devotional brought up the issue of outlier detection. It is something that is done inside of the script. If you look at specifically at the survey duration and Q5, approximate number of years in the crypto space, you will see the outlier detection that I have done in the R script. But given that outlier detection is very consequential when doing EDA, I plan to do an entire devotional, possibly next week, dedicated just to outlier detection and how I do it using the IQR method or standard deviation approach. Speaking of systems for eternity, we're currently working with a client that we worked with 10 years ago, and we were able to revive the Qualtrics survey for them. It's not Silverman, it's a different client, but they also used Qualtrics 10 years ago to field a survey that garnered 4,000 completed responses. But a testament to the system of eternity that we built for them, 10 years later, we are able to revive the .qsf file for the Qualtrics survey, the analysis-ready data files, and the survey PDF, and we can compare everything that was done 10 years ago and lay new tracks for them as we move into another wave of research. This is only possible because 10 years ago, we had the forethought to know that we were building something that someone, maybe ourselves, would need to revisit. That's the idea of building for eternity. Let's recap what we learned about last time, specifically when it comes to selecting the right tools for the job. We're using two tools, R and PowerBI. In both cases, we need to be able to identify the measurement of the data that we're utilizing. This is the M part of the MOST acronym. You will see in the R code if you look through it, and you'll see in the visuals today through PowerBI, that what we're after are measures of shape, center, and spread. How is the data distributed? Well, depending on the type of variable that we have, we can or cannot talk about distribution. So we have to know which tool we're pulling from the toolbox because it's appropriate given the data that we've identified. This was accomplished in R by using the class function. So as you go through each of those questions in the script using the script outline in RStudio, you can see that we start every time by identifying the measurement of the variable being used. Just like the R project file shared last time, the PowerBI file that I'm sharing today goes through Q17. Both of these are works in progress and both will be completed soon. In fact, in PowerBI, I have already completed through Q70-ish, about there. It's moving much faster in PowerBI than it does in R, but both will be laying the tracks for a system that anyone can return to for future waves of EDA, and they'll know exactly what has been done, why I did it, and they'll be able to interact with it. Today in PowerBI, you will see the same copy-paste approach where I build a set of visuals based around the type of data that I have, and then I reuse that over and over so I do not have the drift in formatting equivalent to the drift that I would have had in the scripting that I was doing in R last time. Like last week, we'll be using the same Silverman survey data for the EDA. This was collected from 1,000 crypto users, investors, node operators, and dApp developers. You will see that breakout in the block format of the survey and in the outline in the RStudio project that I shared last time. In PowerBI, we're just going to go question by question. Whether I come back later and add pagination and other kinds of navigation features is to be determined. If I do, it is definitely something I will share with you in a future devotional. But the purpose of this data is for the agent-based model around the tokenomics simulation. This slide has been updated to include the PowerBI PBIX file itself, using the second link here on the slides. The first link will take you to the RStudio project file from last week. We're now looking at the PowerBI service where the Silverman survey EDA dashboard and dataset have been published. This is a private workspace, so they are not currently shared with anyone. The PBIX file would allow you to replicate this yourself in your own workspace, but unlike the previous Silverman survey link, I'm not providing a public live link that's accessible on the web. Instead, I'm just going to show you how it looks inside of the Power BI service. Then I'll jump into Power BI Desktop and show you how I'm building each visual page by page. Like in RStudio, you can see the outline. We have an outline here of all the questions 1 through 17 that have been built into this dashboard, or this report as it's technically called inside of Power BI. And each visual is its own page. With one exception, I'll show you that when we get to Q12. My reasoning for providing Power BI access, in addition to what I did through our studio last week using R, is that non-technical individuals can easily access this dashboard and can easily navigate it. This is a far more feature-rich environment to explore the data in themselves than R Studio, unless they have that technical skill that I mentioned last time, in which case they probably don't want to look at things through Power BI. So this is about the difference in the end user audience. For a decision maker or a stakeholder, something like Power BI is very easy to navigate. There's a clear menu, there's clear navigation. They can come in and they can interact with visuals. They can change this to a table and look at the underlying data. They can, if they have access, clip this visual and add it to their own dashboard. Power BI is a much better environment for the non-technical user. They can even export the data if they have that permission level. All right, let's go back into the report. I mentioned Q12. Let me jump ahead. There are 3 pages for Q12 because there are different ways that we could approach visualizing Q12. As a rank order question, this is distinct from some of the other data that we have been dealing with throughout the first 12 questions of the survey that we analyzed. You can refer to the survey itself to understand this question, but number 1 rank is the best, number 10 is the least. Those were the only range of options provided to them, and each of these different application types were presented for rank ordering, which means we have 10 different visuals because we have 10 different columns of data, because we have 10 different rankings of 10 different applications. What you're seeing right now in Power BI mirrors the approach that we took in our studio last week, which is to create one visual for each of these columns of data. However, there are additional ways of visualizing rank order data, specifically from surveys. And this is where Q12 page 2 and Q12 page 3 come in. This visualization approach combines all 10 of the metrics or the columns simultaneously, displaying along the x-axis the rank orders from 1 to 10, and then giving you the counts by category, so all of those that got 1, all of those that got 2, down to 10. This is potentially an easier way to see some of the patterns across the data. There's a third page for you to also look at, which is a heat map approach, similar to the second page, but now taking a heat map approach using color coding and not numbers to show you some of those patterns. So the green is the higher ranks, the dark is the lower ranks. Just like last week in our studio, we still have to deal with unstructured text or open-ended questions. One way to do this in Power BI is to use the word cloud visualization. This is a visualization that you will have to add. In fact, I'll jump to Power BI now and I'll show you what this dashboard looks like on the desktop side. So let's navigate to Q13. Here we go. There are our notice our various versions of Q12. We're now, for those who do not understand the distinction, what we were looking at previously was the online Power BI service. That is Microsoft's cloud resources where you publish your Power BI dashboards, reports, data files, and other things. When you are building them, you do that inside of Power BI Desktop, which you download and install on a Windows machine. We're using 2 different visualization types on this page. One is the word cloud up here. This is just a matrix table. And with this matrix table, what I have done, I'll expand these panes so that you can see what's going on. What I have done with this matrix table in particular is just set it so that blanks are not shown, everything else is shown. And then this is a way that someone can look through, like some of the old analysts would have done when coding things manually, line by line, response by response, survey taker by survey taker. There will be 1 row here for each survey taker, since they only answered it once. If I highlight any row or group of rows in this table, it will show me on the word cloud words associated with only that response. This is a much better way for an individual to look through this data than the R table outputs that we were producing last week. Let's look around at some of the other visuals while we're here. Q14 is a multiple choice single select. This is one of the visualization types that I keep reusing over and over. I'll show you a multiple choice, multiple select in a moment. The unstructured open-ended text fields are another type. We have some form fields that are numeric, so we're collecting continuous data through those. And we have some rank order preference questions that we've dealt with that I showed you just a moment ago. In each case, I continue to take a visual type and then copy and paste it and reuse it. So I built initially the first few, and let's zoom all the way back here. I started with this visual, Q1, multiple choice, multiple select. With this, I made sure that I had set the Y and the X axes the way that I wanted. I had suppressed certain labels. I had added a title. I had formatted that title in a specific way, a specific size. I have done nothing with any color templatizing. That's an additional step that we can take. But right now, my goal is to recreate one visual for each column in that data set so that anyone could come in here, look at it, understand what's going on, and play around with it. Once this is built and done, it gets added to the treasure chest, which is what we call the package of final deliverables that we hand off, the thing that 10 years ago we gave to a client that we just went back to revive the Qualtrics survey. And if it's published into the Power BI workspace and shared with some of my colleagues or coworkers, they will be able to continue to access this data for eternity. With Q2, I did the same thing that I did with Q1, but now we have a multiple choice single select. I set the same title preferences, I set the same formatting around the visual, and then every time that I need a multiple choice single select visual, I just copy one of these, paste it at the end of the report, modify it, add it into the appropriate spot, and continue on. And I have done that through Q17 here. You can see Q3 is another single select, Q4, another multiple select. Here's Q5. This is one of the numerical form boxes, so we're collecting continuous data here. I don't love this visual. I'm going to deal with this in a future devotional after I get through all the EDA. There are better ways of displaying this through histograms, which is the approach I want to take, or maybe even a density plot like I had done in R. But the story is still the same between this visualization and the one produced last week through RStudio. Q6, this is a scaled question. This is similar to a multiple choice single select in that there is only one response, but now we have 5 categories and the order of this matters. So this is where ordinal data comes in. Whether scaled questions like this are ordinal data or interval data is something that I leave for you to decide. It is a heated debate within the market research world, and the traditional statisticians come down firmly that this is strictly ordinal. Everybody treats it in the practical sense like it is interval and push ahead with parametric analysis using means. Q6, 7, and 8 are like this. 9, similar. 10, we have another. Q11 is a multiple choice, multiple select, but it has a distinction in that they were only allowed to pick 3. We've already talked about Q12 and the 3 versions of that, Q13 and the unstructured open-ended text. But come into the PBIX file, look at how each of these visuals is built by clicking on a visual, looking at the fields that are used, how they are drawn from the different data sets that have been built and included. There is an additional file, I should show you that as well, in the deliverables from last week. So you'll have to go download this to get this file in the RStudio project file from last week, which is the multiple choice and rank order question data processing. So this takes the survey data and outputs the multiple choice questions and the rank order questions for the additional analysis because they require slightly different approaches. This is a very long script. I encourage you to look through it. Praise be to Hector for creating this script. Open it in RStudio, run the file. It will output some data files that you need to then import using Power BI. All of that has been done in the PBIX file that's been shared with you. So this has already been imported here. You can see it. You can come into each visual, like I said, and understand how these visuals are being created from the same underlying data that we used last week with RStudio and R. 15 is another multiple choice single select. 16 is a multiple choice single select. And 17 is another unstructured text open-ended response using word clouds. I said I would come in here and show you how I added this visual. It's very easy. You come in here and you say, get more visuals. It's going to take you online to the Power BI App Store. I can type in word cloud. I used this one by Microsoft. I didn't spend time playing around with this. I downloaded it. It seemed a little bit too complicated for what I was doing at the moment. It seems promising, but I just needed something to get the visuals up. I used this one. Once you click this, it's going to install it into your Power BI desktop environment. So just like loading packages in R last week, this is something you'll have to add. Once you add it, it will show up right here in your visualization pane. One more comment on the Power BI dashboard and the PBIX file. There are 2 pages built from data that are not from the survey itself, but that are from the survey software. The first is the Silverman Survey Taker geolocation, something I showed in a previous data devotional. This requires an Azure-specific visualization card that requires a Power BI license. If you do not have at least a Power BI Pro license, which is $15 a month, I believe, then you will not be able to see this visual or interact with this visual. The page will be there, and it will just say visual can't load. The second page that is built from data provided by the survey software itself is survey duration. And this tries to replicate some of the 5-number summary analysis that we were doing last week in RStudio. Here we see the minimum of duration in seconds. We see the maximum of duration in seconds. Those are the same numbers from the min and the max in the 5-number summary. We have an average and a median. What we're missing here are the quartiles, the first and the third. Those are helpful because with them we can produce the interquartile range and identify outliers. Something that we'll get to in a future devotional, possibly next week. Final reminder, all the files that we've talked about are accessible through these 2 links. So keep your own progress going by completing the EDA along with me, beyond Q17 in both the RStudio and Power BI files. And I'll see you at the upcoming devotionals.